At the end of the day, the essence of storytelling is to infuse energy. On day one, Ava handed me two things. She handed me Mickey Mouse ears and a magic wand. And I thought, this is weird. If I understand what motivates you, Larry, and you, Darrell, at an operational level, I can change my story so that you can see yourself in the story. All of a sudden, what you have, like an empowered customer and an empowered employee who now is like, he actually asked for my advice. What do your customers say about that? And what do your employees say about that? Every voice matters. Big decisions that we need to make. Before we rush into them, let's take a pulse check and talk about it. One of my favorite books is Turn the Ship Around by David Marquet, and thinking out loud, always one of his key mantras, because you all don't know what I'm thinking at right now unless I tell you. You got to go where value gets created. That's where human beings kind of get their stuff done. Let's drive human progress through people and not to people. I want to build the curiosity to really understand the people that I serve and the people that I work with. Like, what do they need and what are they afraid of?
Welcome to the Culture from the Heart podcast on the From the Heart Business Network. In a business world where employees and customers crave authenticity and trust, hosts Larry Levine and Darrell Amy are on a mission to find and showcase heart-centered executives and the companies they lead. You are about to hear an inspiring conversation with a visionary leader that's bringing heart into the workplace, empowering employees, serving their clients, and uplifting communities, all to create true success. This is Culture from the Heart. The movement starts here. Let's begin.
Welcome to Culture from the Heart. I'm your co-host, Darrell Amy, here today with Larry Levine, and we're joined by Brian Turner, Vistage Chair and former CEO of Point B, a consulting company that drives impact at the intersection of expertise, industry insight, and transformative technology. Brian, welcome to Culture from the Heart. It's great to have you here.
Darrell, Larry, it's awesome. I've been waiting for this conversation. I can't wait.
It's our pleasure. Thanks for investing time with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and as we dive in, Brian, the question we ask every guest on the show here is, what does Culture from the Heart mean to you?
I'll try not to give you a consultant answer. It may be hard to do. I look at Culture of the Heart, it's like a commitment. Whether it's the leader, team, or organization, the commitment that change, human progress, happens through people and not to people. And I think that's really important, right? Like, part of our job as leaders is we build the capacity to change. And I think about, for me, I boil it down to the 4 C's. I want to build the curiosity to really understand the people that I serve and the people that I work with. Like, what do they need and what are they afraid of? I think about building the capacity for creativity, really to be able to align what I want to do to what you need, right? And I think a little bit about the capacity for confidence across the organization of how do I make you the hero of the story and not me? And that becomes really important if you really are taking a human-centered approach to change. And probably the last thing I think about is courage, because at times as leaders, it's not the easy path. It's not the path that people want, but it's going off path because in the long run, it is better for the progress that you're trying to achieve. And so when I think about Culture from the Heart, I kind of look at it as it's that commitment between you and I, let's drive human progress through people and not to people.
Hey, thank you for sharing, Brian. And if you can, let's expand on this through people. Where did you start learning about that progress happens through people? Walk us through that.
Oh, I had this mentor. Her name was Ava, way back in the day. We were running this big statewide payroll project, and it was going really bad. And Ava was the next director in for my client. And on day one, Ava handed me two things. She handed me Mickey Mouse ears and a magic wand. And I thought, this is weird. And she said, Brian, every meeting you go in, I want you to think about the Mickey Mouse ears, because your job is to really listen. Listen to what your team needs. Listen to what the customer needs. And it's only from there that you can wave the magic wand and create a new path to lead. And so I always thought about that. And like that happened probably in the first third of my career. And I've kind of evangelized that as like, as a leader, you can't stay in your office. You got to go where value gets created. That's where human beings kind of get their stuff done. So,
yeah, I love this concept of through people, not to people. And in the world we're in right now, with your background in consulting and bringing people and technology together to get people to point B, I'm curious, technology now, especially with the rapid adoption of AI and agents and all of these things, in a world where I think maybe people are feeling like things are being done to them less and less through them, if that makes sense. Like, what does culture look like in a world where more and more of the roles we're playing, and even payrolls are starting to be cut because of adoption of some of these technologies?
I'm a little bit on this mission. You know, what I do for my living is I'm here to build the next generation of leaders. And I think about, you know, there's like the science of management, art of leadership, right? And in the science side, technology reigns. Like we can analyze data, plan faster, measure better our progress. But ultimately, it's the art of leadership. It's like really understanding what drives human behavior and what are people aspired to do? What are they afraid of? And ultimately, how do you adapt and flex as a leader to change your mandate in that direction? And, you know, I think a lot of the conversation has to start with, you know, my classic opening to any conversation, where do I find you? And, you know, people are like, well, how do I interpret that question? And what I'm really looking for is behaviors. I'm scared. I'm afraid. I'm upset. I'm happy. And I think that's where a lot of the learning starts of like, tell me more about that. Well, I'm afraid that AI is going to take my job away. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like, tell me a little bit more about what you see. Here's what. And I think that's the path in to particularly where we are now starts by asking a lot of questions and doing a good job.
And you know what this does is this goes back to the curiosity that you brought up just a little bit ago, is you must bring curiosity to the forefront because people are going to have questions. They're going to be thinking. And as a leader, I think it's the utmost importance. You got to bring curiosity to the forefront.
I think that's true. You know, I remember in probably the last year or so in my tenure as CEO, well, we talked a lot about AI and where we wanted to focus as a company. And I remember one guy distinctly saying, don't try to force fit it, you know, actually just really enable your people to experiment and to learn and to figure out like, okay, how can I use this technology to add more value to the people I serve? And it's funny because I was in my own head at the time. You talk about ego and I'm like, no, we need like an investment program and we need projects and, you know, we need tangible assets built. He was right and I was wrong. And I think a lot of this is I wasn't curious enough to know that my people wanted the creative license to experiment. And I see that all the time now in my job as CEO coach, right? As the CEO or leader who's like, I've got a program to modernize my, you know, the way we use AI in my operations. And that's all good. But have you actually kind of gone to where value gets created to say like, okay, like how do we leverage this technology to add more value to you, the employee, or you, the customer? And I think that's the big piece that might be missing because we all feel like this crazy thing of like, I got to figure out my way on AI and I've got to make a big, bold play. And I think about this younger employee all the time of like, he saw progress as really a collection of individual acts and individual experimentation and the institutional learning that could come from that.
I love it. I love it.
Good lesson for me, right?
Yeah. Great lesson for all of us. Well, before we continue, a quick word from our sponsors that help Culture from the Heart come to life. Let's be honest, finding the right people and building the right culture, that's the holy grail for every leader.
That's why we recommend Titus Talent, because they don't just fill seats, they help you build teams that thrive.
With their partnership plans, you get more than just hiring help. You get a committed team by your side that helps you attract top performers and retain them.
They bring strategy, data, and a human touch to talent optimization. No guesswork, just results.
So if you're ready to invest in your people and create a culture where everyone wins, head over to culturefromtheheart.com/talent to learn more.
That's culturefromtheheart.com/talent. Your culture is your competitive advantage. Design it with Titus Talent.
And we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. Let's rejoin this amazing conversation with Brian Turner. Brian, right before the break, we're having this interesting discussion about AI and thinking about, we just need to drive a program. We need to have a plan versus the curiosity and experimentation. I'm curious, when you think about the culture that you were working to build in your role as CEO at Point B, and now as you advise other CEOs in culture, tell us more about how that culture can support curiosity and support experimentation.
Well, I think at a human level, you're trying to create, I'd say, a place of vulnerability and a place of intentionality, and two different ends of the spectrum. Vulnerability, really being like, it's okay to say, like, I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm not sure what the expected outcome is. And a lot of that has to be modeled because people look to the top of the pyramid or organization chart to see, like, okay, I thought this person was supposed to be the chosen one. And if the chosen one is like, look, I'm stuck, I actually need to talk about, like, do I go left? Do I go right? That allows people in the organization to know that it's okay. It's okay to say, like, I'm a little bit off balance today. I'm trying to figure out how to solve this client problem. Can you help? Or I'm over my skis, like, help me figure out, like, what my next move is. And so part of this is you're creating that feeling like it's embraced by the organization because we want to learn together and we want to grow together. And then you have to kind of create the mechanisms to do that, where you can get diverse group of people together to problem solve and to share. And so we did a lot of that in my last company, of trying to get our employee base to work not within their organizational walls, but across the organizational walls, to just kind of openly talk about, like, what was going on with them and the completion of their work and what they saw ahead for the firm. So that's one angle. And I think the second angle to really enable this is you got to be really intentional. One of my favorite books is Turn the Ship Around by David Marquet. And I always go back to it because, like, I think there's such a compelling message of thinking out loud. It was always his, one of his key mantras, because you all don't know what I'm thinking that right now unless I tell you. And if I tell you, like, hey, I'm about to make this decision and here's why, you can be like, whoa, wait a minute, you missed this key question. Or, I'm about to change the expectation of this assignment and here's why. Like, that level of intentionality kind of builds trust because we're not operating in ambiguity. And I think, like, that coupled with that culture of vulnerability really becomes an unlock, because then, right, we're able to talk about the things that scare us that we don't know. And we're able to actually be explicit in, like, well, here's what I'm going to do about it. And that takes the guesswork out, and it kind of breaks down, like, those doggone silos that get in the way of human beings. So
this is good. I want to go back to this environment of vulnerability and intentionality, because I think in times of uncertainty, this is mission critical. So when you look at this, who was some of the leaders that really modeled this, that formed this thought process you have as a CEO is, I got to bring this to the forefront. Who modeled that and inspired you around vulnerability and intentionality?
I think about the three founders of Point B. I was lucky enough to join Point B in the earlier part of that company's journey. And I think the three founders really modeled this well. If there were things that they didn't know, they would own it, right? And they'd be like, okay, I need your help to figure this out. And I think they were very good on, Brian, here's the step, here's what I'm thinking, and here's the steps that I need you to take. And, that impacted me and a whole generation of leaders at that company. And now, what happens with companies is those leaders go out to other companies, and then you begin to kind of build this movement of like, hey, let's be okay with what we don't know. Let's call it out. But also let's be very explicit on like, what are we going to do next? And so I think about those three founders a lot because they caught me at a very influential moment in my career journey where I was coming out of a command control environment. I just thought that was the way you got things done. And lo and behold, like there's a whole different way that actually like empowers people to contribute. And I was like, I kind of like that better.
I'm curious, what are some of the aspects of the culture at the organization as you stepped into leadership that were really standout aspects of the culture that you admired and were trying to build on?
Yeah, I think, at Point B, I love what my predecessors and the founders did to create that organization and the people who are, carrying it forward right now, because I think there was a sense of like every voice matters. And on the big decisions that we need to make, before we rush into them, let's take a pulse check, and talk about it. And I think like the town hall philosophy and the ability to bring employees together to have them process some big change that we were trying to make, like that will always stick with me as like something that now in my job, I will advise a CEO to do the same. I had the CEO just earlier this week. CEO's business has like a hot hand, like part of their business is growing pretty quickly. And he was like, okay, how much do I lean into that right now? And what my first questions were like, what do your customers say about that? Have you talked to them? And what do your employees say about that? What have you talked to have you talked to them? And, he paused and he said, well, our data is showing X, Y, Z. And I said, like, the power's in the conversation, actually, right? Of like, here's what our systems are telling us, and here's what I'm seeing. Okay, my biggest client, what are you seeing? And am I reading it the right way? I'd like to get your advice. Or even for the new hire to be like, okay, we're in a place of like, we got a lot of work coming in. Do you think I should take advantage of this and double down? Or do you think I should play it cautiously, and why? And all of a sudden, what do you have? Like an empowered customer and an empowered employee who now is like, hey, he actually asked for my advice. And so like, I'm really in now. And, I think that goes back a lot to, my early days with Point B, and I've kind of pulled that forward. So.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Well, let's take a quick break. We'll hear from our sponsor. When we come back, we'll talk with Brian about some advice he'd give to other leaders who are thinking about enhancing their culture. See you in a moment.
For many CEOs, sales feels like a black box.
You've got visibility into marketing metrics, financial dashboards, operational KPIs. But when it comes to the sales team, it feels like guesswork.
That black box, it's costing you, because if you can't see what's happening, you can't fix what's broken or fuel what's working.
That's where the Sales Index steps in. It opens the black box of sales and shows you the real story. Who's thriving, who's struggling, where they need help, and how much revenue is being left on the table.
You'll get clear, actionable data on sales behavior, mindset, and team culture, so you know exactly where to invest and how to drive growth.
So stop flying blind. Go Go to salesindex.ai and mention Culture from the Heart for 10% off an index of your sales team.
Sales Index, because when sales stops being a black box, you start unlocking real sales results.
You're listening to Culture from the Heart, and we're having a fantastic conversation today with Brian Turner. Brian, right now, it's very exciting as you have moved on from your role as CEO of Point B. You're now coaching CEOs of companies of all different shapes and sizes in your role as a Vistage Chair. I'm curious, what are you seeing in terms of trends inside the companies that you're coaching when it comes to culture and the importance of culture in those organizations?
I love my job, right? It's actually, I have this crazy goal of I want to help 100 leaders, do something really big over the next 5 years, either for their company or even for themselves. And right now I'm working with about 16 and talking probably about another 20 or 30 of joining this movement. And, the themes, I think about the themes that we're talking about and the implication on culture. There's a good tie back to our previous conversation. In the world of uncertainty, most of these leaders want to hunker down and they want to be able to control the playing field, right? Like, let's try to eliminate variability. And, the challenge is the world is changing so fast. They don't see enough, right? And they need to embrace more points of view. And so part of this is like, how do you rewire the executive so that in ambiguity, rather than leading with control, you're leading with empowerment, and you're actually widening your listening devices to listen to other voices. Some of that can come from peers that are part of your cohort, and some come from inside your organization. I think the second thing is it's the leader's ability to storytell. And you think about the impact on culture and where we started with change happens through people. I think as a general rule, we still have it wrong. Like, we think human progress happens like above the shoulders. It's this big coconut, right, that sits on our shoulder. And we think like logic, data, all of those things lead to innovation and lead to progress. And, really it's the storytelling of the changes that we want to create and the ability to move that into the heart and soul of the people that make up our companies that are ultimately going to determine like how you lead through ambiguity. And so, a big part of this conversation around culture of heart is like, how do you change it from a place of like thinking through things to like enabling the people around you to see what you see and to take actions on their end that actually move your company forward. And I think that's an unnatural movement when you have a lot of change that is happening in society as a whole. And so I think that's definitely two of the trends. I think like the other place it shows up is, a lot of leaders in times of ambiguity want to control all the chess pieces on the chessboard. And all of a sudden, if you have a place that really is, prioritizing employee empowerment, it's like, well, wait a minute, like you just took responsibility away from me. Like, why are you looking over my shoulder? Do you not trust me? And like, and so part of this, like doing that rewiring of the executive of like, you should always be looking up and out and telling stories down and in that allow you to point the direction and what your clear expectations are. And then guess what, gang? You got to get out of the way, right? Because you got to let your employees drive. And so like, those are some of the, I'd say the kind of the macro things that we're playing with.
I I think this, and I'd be curious your thoughts, is I think the word inspiration flows somewhere in where you're saying, especially when it comes to storytelling and casting vision.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's at the end of the day, like that is the essence of storytelling, is to infuse energy. And, there's a connection back to curiosity, right? Because if you're curious enough, if I understand what motivates you, Larry, and you, Darrell, at an operational level, I can change my story so that you can see yourself in the story. And that unlocks the inspiration, and I think there are plenty of like public examples that we can look to say like, oh, that leader was inspiring. That's what they're doing, right? Is they're creating a picture so that you can see yourself inside their narrative. And like, I think that's the golden goose of inspirational leadership and telling stories. Beautiful.
What a phenomenal conversation. As we wrap up, Brian, if you could say one thing to the leaders of today that are navigating all of this change and uncertainty, what would you say?
Check where you're spending your time. If you're spending your time in operational details and meetings and not where value gets created, like you have an obligation to change where you're putting your energies. Because all those people who are working with your customers or receiving your services, they really want you. They want you there. They want you listening. They want you providing perspective. And if you really want to move the dial on your organization, like you should be prioritizing that time over sitting in a room talking about like, what are we going to do with this lease agreement that comes up? And so, I think that's the calling here is, I go back to, can we develop as a generation of leaders this commitment to drive change through people and not to people? And it starts with us modeling that curiosity, creativity, confidence, and courage to put other people as the heroes of the story and not try to over control things. So
wonderful. Brian, thank you so much for sharing time with us today. This has been very inspirational. We really appreciate you.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I hope you invite me back someday.
Anytime.
Anytime, Brian. What a phenomenal conversation to do things through people instead of to people. That's what we call a writer downer, Larry. That's something we need to remember all the time. What a powerful concept.
Yeah, because I want us just to think real quick is when you grow through people, that transfers out into the marketplace, which is your business's customers.
That's right. What a phenomenal conversation. Hey, thank you to everybody who's sharing this show. And thank you to all of our friends who are actually nominating their CEO to be a part of this. So if you know a leader who fits the bill, we'd love to talk to them. Go to culturefromtheheart.com. Nominate your CEO. Once again, thank you for joining us today. We believe that culture is the heartbeat of every organization. And as Brian has reminded us today, it's about doing things through people, not to people. So thank you for joining us in Culture from the Heart. Until next time, lead with your heart and watch your culture thrive.
Thank you for joining us on this journey to discover heart-centered leaders shaping extraordinary company cultures. To access a leader guide with notes from this week's episode, simply click the link in the show notes or visit us at www.culturefromtheheart.com. Do you know a CEO who's built a culture from the heart? We'd love to hear their story. Head over to www.culturefromtheheart.com and click the Nominate Your CEO button. Until next time, remember, great cultures start with the heart.